last episode, we created a dye factory, which is going to churn out all 16 different colors of dye so that we can use that to make some concrete in a new factory to give us all the blocks we need to create our emerald farm. We also went into the nether and upgraded our armor. We managed to get full netherite gear, which I'm super happy about. But me, not being so smart, managed to use up all of my netherite smithing templates. However, in this episode, I have some good news. At the end of that episode, I didn't realize that we actually got a Feed the Beast quest completion for getting the Cover Me in Netherite achievement. And that quest completion actually granted us another smithing template. So while I thought we had wasted all of our smithing templates and we would never be able to duplicate another one, we were given one by Feed the Beast. That's fantastic. I'm so happy. So we don't need to worry about that anymore, which is fantastic. But you might be wondering, there's something else in my inventory that is pretty new that we didn't have last time. And I'm sure you can see it now. It's in my hand. It is a totem. So I don't know if you remember, but last episode ended with me attacking some pillagers to get the final cut for talking about the emerald farm. Now on the back of that, I spent another couple of minutes doing that to get a good cut. And we ended up with Bad Omen. And I thought, I want to try a raid. I've never done a raid before, but I tried a raid and I ended up getting some totems. So we have some totems. We will be doing some raids in the episodes as well, but I thought I would just let you guys know that I decided to go ahead with a little raid, and yeah, we ended up with some totems. Nothing really eventful happened. It was pretty boring, to be honest. So we succeeded in the raid. We got Hero of the Village. We didn't use it. I'm trying not to use villagers too much this season, but we did get it. That's interesting at least. Anyway, with that aside, what we are going to be working on this episode is our concrete factory. So we're going to be using all of the different colored dyes we are producing in this factory right here in order to make us some concrete, which we are going to use to make our emerald farm. So you can see between episodes, I did a little bit of terraforming. So I'll just go and show you underneath. That contraption that we use to flatten out our industrial district, I just sent it one more time up this way and stopped it around a bit there. And this is where our concrete factory is going to sit. I had thought about sitting it in this corner here. If you remember, our industrial district sort of cut off maybe 1 or 2 blocks over from our fence. So I just extended it a little bit, but I thought about running it up this way, but then I thought it would feel a little bit too cramped, and I kind of want to try something new with this factory. So yeah, I thought I would just run the contraption up one more time to flatten out a small area that we can use for our concrete factory. So I have a couple of inspirations for the concrete factory, but nothing solid design-wise. I don't think we're going to be using a schematic cannon for it, but I am pretty excited. I think it is going to look quite good. I think we're going to need a few contraptions that we actually have quite a lot of anyway. Like, we definitely need a cobblestone generator. That's a given. So we're probably just going to take the one from the create factory because it is the most efficient and the fastest and also the smallest. So it can fit into more compact spaces. And then we need a couple of crushing wheels, and that's it. We just need sand, gravel, and dye, which we already have. And then it's just a case of crafting, which I think to start with, we might craft up some manually potentially, or we can see if we can get a mixer situation going. But let's jump in. I want to get this ground sort of slightly terraformed a little bit more. I want to go for a more stony, sandy, gravelly kind of look with the ground. So let's get that sorted, and then we can go from there. After a little bit of terraforming and putting up a little fence around the perimeter, I think we have a very nice looking area where we can start our concrete factory. So the idea was for this factory to be a little bit out of the box compared to what we've done already. So you can see our dye factory, our create factory, and our metal factory all sort of fit into kind of a neat box of like late 20th century industrial revolution style factories with red brick and a little bit of metal container attached to the side. Obviously slightly different for the metal factory, but for the most part it all fits into one sort of general theme. For this factory, I wanted to do something a little bit different where I wanted to get the idea of like a concrete mill kind of thing that you would see about the really big metal structures that are usually raised off the ground, and there's maybe a big drill underneath it potentially, or some conveyor belts, or just storage. Just something raised off of the ground in general, and I think that's the sort of vibe I want to go for with this. And I quite like the idea of it, and I think I want to start it over here. So I do have a load of andesite scaffolding that I want to use for this, just to map out sort of the edges. And I think I maybe want the edges to be a little bit in from the edge. So maybe like here. And I kind of want to go up possibly about that high. So that's 1, 2, possibly about 9 high. And I want it to be quite wide because we do need a lot of space, but also even. So something like that for the back, possibly. And then we'll just go over this way a little bit and make some room for the front. And I think something like that works. I'll just pop into free cam and have a little look quickly. Yeah, I think something like this works. I quite like the height that this gives. I think this is a good height. I might move these two that are on the right hand side in a little bit so we can have the staircase up on this side. I quite like the idea of having the staircase on the side, so I might move these in a few blocks, maybe to here. Yeah, I quite like that. We could do a sort of almost like an overhang. So if we come to here, something like this, and we can have the staircase in this little edge bit here. So I quite, yeah, okay, I quite like that idea. That's a really good idea, I think. And then I do want, just to add some structure, I think I want to go in between these two and add some pillars as well. And now with a couple of extra pillars and the staircase sorted, I think we are in a good place. I really like how this looks. I've kind of gone for a sort of almost like Rust for Modern Warfare 2 kind of vibe. That's what this is reminding me of for some reason. I can't explain why, because it's a totally different color palette, but it really feels like that's sort of where the inspiration's been drawn from, and in a way it kind of has. But I really like this staircase. I think it looks really cool and really industrial, and it just fits the build that I want to get done so well. So I think what I want to work on next is probably getting some sort of actual block put on top of here, and it is going to be sort of quite blocky in shape, very square. I think a lot of these factories tend to be very square. It almost just looks like they've put a shipping container on top of scaffolding stilts. So that's the kind of vibe that I'm going for. I have some of this andesite sheet metal that I'm going to use for the walls, and hopefully it comes together quite well. We'll texture up with some blocks of andesite alloy and some blocks of zinc, and hope that it sort of pieces together nicely and looks the part. And then I have an idea for the floor that I'm going to try. Yeah, let's get that built and we'll see how it looks. And now with something built up around our little platform, I'm really happy with it. This is the interior that we have. We are going to have the cobblestone generators in this back part right here. I've raised the roof up a little bit to give them a bit more space. I wasn't quite sure if they would be too tall for this area. They may not be, but I think giving them a little bit of extra space makes a bit of sense anyway. And this area in here is going to be what we're going to use to create the concrete. We also have this little conveyor belt going down out the center of the building to give us an idea of where we can put our storage. So I think I want the storage to be down here, disguised as a pile of concrete and concrete powder, and maybe various stones and andesite and just other textures as well. But I really like how this building has turned out. I think it's really, really cool. It gives that kind of industrial feel, and also the scaffolding makes a really sort of lightweight metal build kind of look, and I really like it. I think it looks really, really cool. And if we just have a look at it from the die building, you can see that it does really sort of fit into that area really nicely. I think it fits in with the whole industrial district really well. I think if we have a look on the map, it is a much lighter color, but I think it adds a bit of contrast, and we'll have quite a bit going on in this area as well. Different processing areas, big piles of concrete, some shipping containers, stuff like that. Maybe a little car park so that we can get a van driving in. But overall, I think this is a really, really cool build, and I'm super, super happy with it. And now that we have a building that we're happy with, I think we can start working on our cobblestone generator in the back here. So I've collected up everything that I think I'm going to need, and we are just going to get started. So I want to start over here. I need to leave a couple of blocks gap, I think. And then we just need to build up our vault. Build it up like that, and then we're just going to extend it as far as we can before it becomes a second vault, which is about there. And then I want to see how much space we have. So we do have quite a bit of space, so I'm going to try and centralize it a little bit more. There we go. So now that we have the item vault set up, what we can do is we can get the pumps and the sails set up. There we go. So now we have all the pumps in, and then on top of the pumps, we want to put the fluid tanks. But before we do that, we do need to waterlog all of the pumps. So now that we have the tanks in place, the only thing left to do is to turn this into a contraption and then actually switch it on and get some lava into the tanks. But I have an idea for that, which is why I've brought the 3 buckets of lava. So what we are going to do is we are going to get a item drain hooked up here, and on the outside of this item drain, we are going to get a pump facing out, and then we are going to have some pipes leading in from the item drain out into the tank. And then all we need to do is take our bucket, fill that up, so we have 1 bucket of lava in there, and then we just need to transfer into the tank, and we just need to do that 3 times. So overall, it's not actually that bad. We just need to get some power in here. So obviously with the power being underground, that makes it a little bit more difficult for this building, but I don't think we're going to have too much trouble. I think I want to bring the power in from the back anyway. So probably from around about here, maybe into this back corner right there. See, this is probably a good spot to bring the power up into. So we're going to get something set up just to bring some power into the building from up here. And where is our closest source of power? Probably over there. But at this rate, it makes more sense to just bring it directly from the power factory. So we're going to do just that. Let's route some power over and get everything sorted out. Perfect. And now that we have power up here, what we can do is we can grab a shaft and some gearboxes and then get this all hooked up so that we can do our little trick with the lava buckets. So if we rotate that, then we can get that all sorted, and we need this to connect here. So we need another gearbox and a shaft, and then that'll fill that up with 1 bucket worth of lava. Perfect. Then we can just grab this whole setup and move it along. Perfect. Now the next part we need is we need to open up these 2 just like that. So I have a threshold switch, I have my minecart, and I have my cart assembler. I have a rail, and that I think is all I need. So if I put my threshold switch just here, I need to pop a rail on top of it, a minecart on top of that, and then a cart assembler on top of that. Then I need a solid block. Let's use a block of iron, pop that up there. And then all we need to do is glue all of this together and get a lever on the front, and then we are good to go. There we go. Perfect. So now that is working with no issues. It's breaking everything as it should be, and the water is flowing normally. So we just need to hook up some power to that top row up there, which shouldn't be too difficult with the system that we have. So let's grab a cogwheel, and we can get rid of this, and then get a cogwheel on here like that. And then just 1 more out the back there. Couple more shafts. Another gearbox. And then we just connect this up with shafts as well. And that is our cobble machine all sorted. So now that we have that sorted, what we can do is we can take 2 lines out from here and start our process of milling down everything that we need to mill down. So I think we're probably just going to use maybe all 9 of these. I haven't actually thought about how we are going to lay this out yet, but let me have a think and we will come back and get it done. And I think for now, a setup like this is going to be able to do the job just fine. So what we have is we have 2 lines coming out of our cobblestone generator storage, which are going to go through crushing wheels to create gravel on this line. And then it will do the same here, and it will go through 1 more set of crushing wheels to create sand, clay, and flint, which will then be split onto these 2 lines, giving us the flint and clay into this voided 1x2 spruce drawer, and then the rest, which will be only sand, will come out onto this line. So that should cover creating the 2 different components we need to create concrete powder. The only other portion that we need are the dyes. Now, I've been thinking about the dyes for a little while, and I think the best idea that I've had is actually a goods elevator coming in through the side of the building. So you can see that is where I have knocked out this little section of wall just here. This is where we're going to put the goods elevator, and we're going to open up this part of the fence to allow for a little drive-through almost, where a truck can come along and drop off everything that it needs. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to knock out a few bits of the floor here so that we can keep it centered. And I think just 2 lines should be okay. And we're going to get the goods elevator built up. So we do actually need some of this andesite casing. And if I just find the middle block here, so I want this to be our middle block, I think. So we do that, and then we can add 1 on top. And then if we get rid of that one, we can go out from all sides on this one. So we are going to need some more andesite scaffolding, but this is going to be the floor of our goods elevator. And we do want it to stop about here as well. So it's going to go up and connect with everything. So I actually need to get rid of this line here, which is fine. And then we are going to extend this out as well. And it is going to be the whole width of this section, but it's going to come up here and drop off the dyes. So we are going to set up a system where we can pull this up, collect all the dyes, and then drop it back down to the bottom, where it's just going to sit at the bottom until it gets all of the dyes that it needs, or at least until it gets enough that it can be sent off. So I have a little idea for the design of that. Let's go and gather up all the materials that we need, and then we can talk through building it when we have those. Okay, now that we have all of the materials and we have a little platform built up, what we can do is get this all sorted. So what I want to do is just decorate this first. So with that all done and that looking definitely like something that would go up and down in a factory like this as a goods elevator, we can move on to the more technical aspect of what we are doing. So over here is where we need to start thinking about this kind of stuff. So I think I actually want this to be moved down a level, which is fine. So we're going to build everything 1 layer lower, but that is okay because once this moves down, it will stop on the ground anyway. It shouldn't push any further than that. So what we are going to do is we are going to grab our item drains and we're going to come out 2 blocks from here. So we're going to go just here, and we will need to knock out a little section of this fence. And we are going to create a little setup just like this. So this setup is going to allow us to connect these 2 portable storage interfaces together, as well as pull a truck over and connect up another portable storage interface, which is going to sit just here, so that we are going to be able to transfer items in and out of this system to allow everything to move. So for this, we are going to put on a brass funnel, which we are going to use a list filter to say that only dyes can come out of this side. And then obviously the andesite funnel is just going to let everything in, but it will only be dyes at that point anyway. So from here, we do have a little bit of actual redstone to do, which I think was probably going to be the most confusing part of this build. So we're going to have a smart observer watching the andesite funnel for any movement that is going on and any time something enters the andesite funnel. So once we get an output signal from the andesite funnel, that is going to go out into a pulse extender, which we do have just here. So this pulse extender is going to be set to 15 seconds. That's just the best interval that I've found for this distance. It could potentially be different if you're trying to build this yourself, but we are going to get that sorted there. Then we are going to do a sort of cross pattern with our blocks just like this. and this middle block and this block are going to be empty. And on these blocks, we're going to have redstone links. So we're going to have a redstone link there, a redstone link there, and a redstone link on the top just here. And on this block down here, we are going to put a redstone torch. So this will all make sense once we build up the clutch mechanism for this. But essentially what this is doing is it is detecting when an item is going into the andesite funnel. And at that point, it is going to turn on a clutch, which is going to stop the rope pulley from moving. And then that rope pulley is then going to stop moving the contraption so that it can fill up. That is going to be stopped by this redstone link here, which is then going to turn off the redstone torch and allow the rope pulley to start pulling in the other direction, which isn't going to happen until this portable storage interface and this clutch. Essentially, when this clutch turns off. So that is going to happen after 15 seconds of a delay from the final item going into the funnel. And then this redstone link up here is just going to flip the direction of the rope pulley to pull it back up, and then tell it essentially to flip again so that it can send it back down, and it's just going to stay down here as long as this is in place. So I hope that made sense. It'll make a lot more sense once I actually build the second half of the contraption. But as far as down here goes, this side is done. So I'm going to move up to the top and build the internal system and get it all hooked up from there. Okay, now that we have the top portion done, I've actually realized that this can be much simpler than I thought it was going to be. So we actually only need one redstone link for this to work the way that I think it is supposed to, which makes our life so much easier, because we should now be able to actually get this working just with this setup here. So if I grab 2 redstone links, what we need is one on this block and then one on this block down here, and we can get rid of everything else in the circuit because it's actually not needed anymore. So I actually forgot how to build this initially and went back into my creative test world and realized that I'd made a mistake the first time around, and this makes it so much easier. And there we go, we have a working goods elevator in our concrete factory, ready to bring up all of the dyes that we need. So this will be perfect for when we have a truck. It can drive by and drop off any dyes that we need to put into the factory, and then it can all go up into our factory through here, which is perfect. And it all comes over to this barrel here, which is going to come out on a line over this way, and then this is going to come out onto this line over here, which will take it down this way. So all we need to do is hook that up and make sure that everything works okay, so that we can send it down into our system to get it all mixed up and create it into actual concrete powder. So now that we have a way to get the dyes up into the concrete factory, the only thing we are missing is a way to do, well, pretty much everything else in terms of making the concrete. And that is where this absolute mess of belts comes into play. So what we have is we have the sand and the gravel being spit out onto this line here, along with all the dyes coming out of this barrel at the end here that have been brought up from the elevator. They are all going to go along this line and be picked up by these basins. The sand and gravel will be picked up in stacks, in full stacks, and then because we'll have every color of dye coming out of this barrel, because we're not trying to filter it at this stage, we are going to have brass funnels with list filters of each color dye on the back of each of these basins to make sure that each basin only ever gets the dye that it needs. The dye is going to run all the way along this line and then all the way along this line. You would think it would go down one of these sides, but we'll get back to these in a second. It's going to run all the way along to this line here, and then go all the way along and get picked up by the necessary basin. If it ends up being something, for example, brown dye in this basin, then the brown dye will come all the way here and be picked up by this basin here. These basins are going to mix up the concrete powder, and these 2 lines in the middle are our output lines, which is why the basins are all facing onto these lines here. The concrete powder is going to go along here and then be split by these belts into these 4 rows. Now these 4 rows are going to get washed, And then they are going to be split by these two tunnels here onto these lines, which will take them down into our storage area underneath the base. I say underneath the base, it's probably just going to be down there in general. We're going to have some storage drawers disguised as little piles of concrete so that we can see exactly what we are storing. So this should, once this is up and running, be everything that we need in order to manage what we are going to be creating in this factory. And I think I am only going to waterlog these 3 lines so that we still store a little bit of normal concrete powder in case we ever need that for texturing or anything like that. And the reason I'm going to waterlog these 3 is because if I waterlog this one, then every single other line is going to be washed and it is going to be turned into full-on concrete. I'm hoping that with the speed these fans are going at, by the time the concrete reaches the end here, it is going to be washed. If not, we will have to maybe rethink the speed of these belts, possibly. But either way, it should hopefully wash everything that we need it to wash. And then this line will be just concrete powder that is going to be stored down there as well. So I think the most difficult part of this is going to be powering everything. So you can see I have a gearbox here. So these lines should all go to the left. This gearbox will flip that input, causing all of the fans to turn to the right, which is, I think that is the blow setting. And then from there, that gearbox, this encased chain drive also connects to this belt, which will cause these 2 belts to run to the right, which is exactly where we need them to go. A simple gearbox in this corner should cause these to go to the right. And then a couple of encased chain drives on this end here will cause all of these to take everything down. This belt is the one that I am worried about, but I think we're going to try and power that. Maybe from somewhere over here, we'll try and figure that out. I think this belt's going to be the most difficult because it's in the most awkward spot, but I think we can figure out a way to power it somehow. These belts should be okay to power. We might just need a gearbox in here, which is going to power everything off of this belt. So this belt should take everything to the left if I'm facing the cobblestone generator, which means a gearbox just on this line somewhere in here should turn these 2 belts to the right if I'm facing the cobblestone generator. And then we can take an input from this belt over here, which again should be turned into the left with a simple 2 gearboxes here to invert and then re-invert the signal. Should take this over down towards the tunnels, and then likewise we can use encased chain drives over here to get everything to link up properly. So I'm hoping that that all works. I'm going to try and get that all fixed up and get all the belts working. If I have to make any modifications, I'll pop back and tell you guys, but I think that should be everything that we need. Then we can waterlog the belts, get some mixers on. I have the Create Factory creating up a bunch of whisks for us. And then hopefully that should be the concrete factory done. And then we can have a look at getting it to actually work by putting in some crushing wheels and some funnels, just to make sure that everything can operate as expected. We'll also get a couple of threshold switches down at the bottom to power these funnels in case we don't need any more concrete. Or we can just have a clutch on the line somewhere to power everything off when we need it to be off. We'll have a think about that in a minute as well. But I'm going to try and get all of these belts running, see if I can manage it, and especially see if I can figure this belt out, because just while recording this, I realized there isn't actually a way to power this belt. Unless we power off of this belt. That seems like the most reasonable scenario, so let's try that. I'll come back to you guys when the belts are all working. Okay, now that we have all of the belts going in the right direction, everywhere is powered. I've had to make a little modification to this back belt here, but everything should be working just fine now. So we have our washing station, we have our output, we have our input lines to the mixers. Everything should be in order. We have our split with our gravel, our sand, and our different dyes. Everything should be going quite smoothly. We just have to hope that it actually works. So what I'm going to do is waterlog these belts, and then we are going to get some crushing wheels and give this a little test. Okay, it is time for the moment of truth. I have added all of the mixers, and I have made sure that everything is in place correctly. all we need to do is add this shaft back and everything should work. Actually, I had just realized that we had no power to the mixers, but now we do. We have hooked everything up. Everything should be working. We've filtered all of the basins to make sure they're making the right concrete powder. We have also added filters to all of these systems to make sure that they are collecting the right concrete powder dye. So all we need to do is get some dye into the system and give it a quick test. So the way I'm going to do that is we are going to turn on our machine. We are going to turn off the cobblestone and gravel generation. Then we are going to go and grab some white dye and some green dye. And the reason I want to check white and green is because they are the two ends of the rows. So white will be the first color to be picked up. So I just want to test, can it be picked up passing this funnel? And then green is all the way at the end. So I just need to check, does it go past all of these and not get picked up? End up over here and on this line? And does it go all the way to the end and get picked up by this one at the end here? Is there anywhere that it gets caught? Is there anything that happens? Does the washing interfere with the dye at all? I just need to figure that out with a little bit of troubleshooting. These lines should be moving fast enough for the washing not to affect it, but we'll find out. So I'm going to go and grab some white and some green dye. Then we are going to give everything a go. Okay, the dye is in the system. All we need to do is turn this on, and then there goes the green dye. The white dye has been picked up. Green dye has been picked up. And where has it been picked up is my question. It has been picked up at the end. So that does work correctly, and the white dye is in the right place. So now we just need to wait for the sand and the gravel to kick in correctly. And I have just realized a big problem with our setup here, specifically for gravel. So I'm going to go and turn everything off, and then we are going to troubleshoot that. Okay, and with one more little tweak, I think we have this figured out. I think we have a pretty fair system going on for the rest of the concrete types. We just need to figure out a way to get the sand and the gravel to not back up all the way to here. But I think for now we can call this half of the build done. It has a little bit of tweaks that need doing to get everything sorted and working properly and, you know, going with full efficiency, but it's nothing that we cannot solve. However, I want to get the storage room set up, and this episode is already getting very late, so I want to get it out to you guys. And the build does work. I'm really happy with it. It just needs a little bit of manual input, which I know isn't ideal, but we are going to fix it. Don't worry. We still have a way to get all of our concrete for next episode. So this is still a big step forward, and it still means we are on track. So don't worry. And I think to get everything into the storage, what I want is something that looks like a big pile of concrete just at the bottom here, which is essentially going to act as a cover for our storage. So I just want a big sort of varied block of loads of different colors of concrete that looks like it's all piling up into the one area to make it just a big pile of unused concrete falling at the bottom here, and I think that would look quite cool. Then down here we are going to have drawer controller slaves on these blocks there, with some brass funnels to let in, or actually some andesite funnels just on the front there to get everything into the storage system. Then we are going to hook everything up underneath to make sure that it all hooks up properly. And I think for now, that actually looks pretty good. I think there's definitely something about this definitely looks like a big old unused pile of concrete powder, which is really cool. So my idea for the storage is that there are going to be little piles of concrete dotted around this yard, and each pile is going to represent a different color. And it's all going to be connected to the same storage interface, but each color is going to have a drawer corresponding to its own dye, or its own concrete based on its color. So I think it's going to be really cool. I really can't wait to get everything set up. They're all just going to be quite small. This is probably going to be the biggest pile of concrete that we have. But that kind of makes sense for what we're doing, because all of the concrete is getting rushed down these lines into this big pile, and we're just going to have little stacks here and there of all the different types, and then maybe a forklift or two along the yard somewhere just to make it feel a little bit more useful, some shipping containers underneath, and I think it's all going to come together really well. So let me go and grab up a bunch of the different types of concrete powder so that we can get everything on the go, get all the piles created, and then we can start hooking up the storage interface from there. And now that we have all of the pieces that we need in order to get this going, all I'm going to do is pop some holes in the ground where I think these might be. Just like that. Perfect. And now that we have all of those laid out, what I want to do is grab some colors so that we can fill these up. And with a little bit of decorating and the addition of another little forklift in one of our factories, just like the one over by our metal and crate factory, I think this concrete yard is looking really, really good. So underneath the concrete factory, what we have is just some shipping containers and a few things to sort of liven up the area, make it all seem a little bit more used and lived in and like a full infrastructure. And I'm really happy with it. The forklift makes all of the piles make a lot more sense, and I could not be happier with how this build has turned out. So let's go and turn it on so we can get a little bit more movement going on in our factory. And then hopefully that will be the concrete factory done. So if we turn this on, and now that we have a little bit more movement and some concrete on the lines waiting to go into storage, we can say that this factory is done. I'm super happy with the way that it's turned out. I'm super happy with the way that the yard looks. Everything about this build, just, it looks good. I like it. I'm really happy with how far we have taken this build and what we were able to engineer up there. I know it needs a few little tweaks, but it does put us one step closer to being able to farm those emeralds. So, speaking of farming emeralds, that is going to be our plan for next episode. We have all of the dyes that we need, we have the space that we need, we have an idea, and we have all of the concrete that we need to be able to build our little building. So I'm super excited. I cannot wait for you guys to see that, and I really, really hope that the emerald farm I've designed actually works well. I've done a little bit of testing in a creative world and it seems to work fairly decent. It's not massively efficient, but it's also not the least efficient farm I've built. So I think it's going to be worth our time to build regardless. And until we get a fully fledged raid farm set up in that village over there, it's going to be our best shot of getting loads of emeralds for upgrading our storage system. And with all that being said, I really hope you guys enjoyed this episode, and I hope you guys will enjoy the next episode. If you haven't already subscribed, you should, because we are going to be doing a lot of things in this industrial district. We have a lot more to come. I have a lot of really cool ideas that I cannot wait to show you guys, and I think it's going to be really, really cool to see this place evolve. It's really filling out with different builds and different factories, all generating us different stuff, and overall I think this is going to be a really, really cool place, and it's also going to be a really, really cool series of episodes that I have planned. So I hope you guys are enjoying, and I hope you guys want to stick around for a little bit more. If you guys want to help support the channel any further, feel absolutely no obligation to do so. This is just a little suggestion for anybody who wants to go an extra step or support the channel in any other ways. But I do have a Patreon that I've set up. The link is down in the description if you do want to help out in any way to keep these videos alive. That would be really, really appreciated. And obviously there is no obligation whatsoever to do that, but if you do feel like it is something that you want to do, please feel free. The link is just down in the description below. Other than that, I really do hope you guys have enjoyed this episode. Seeing all the support on the previous episodes has been really, really nice. From everybody leaving comments or liking the video or even just viewing the video, and everybody keeping up with the channel as a whole. It means a whole lot. So I really, really appreciate you guys. I hope you guys are enjoying the series. I'll see you guys in the next episode. Bye. The worst thing about recording intro cinematics is the cleanup when I do something stupid like show off my netherite armor.